So first, revocable planning. When would I want to set up a revocable trust for me? I'm going to breeze through the first one. I'll come back to it, the planning for incapacity. But going to the next bullet points, the privacy after death. That comes into play if you're talking about celebrities, or if you've got a kind of a funky estate plan that you don't really want the whole world to know about, because if you put it in your will, all of those provisions, you know, your funky estate plan, you put all of those provisions into your will, that has to be filed with the court at the time of your death. It's now public record. Anybody can go see it. I mean, I could go pull up Michael Jackson's will. Can't pull up Prince's because I don't think he had one. But, you know, it's all public record. So that's the privacy. Avoiding probate. So I used to have clients come in and sit down with me and say, I want to avoid probate. And I'd kind of scratch my head and say, okay, but you're a Georgia resident, right? And yes. I was like, okay, well, avoiding probate's really not that big of a deal in the state of Georgia. If you've got property outside of the state, okay, avoiding probate in those jurisdictions, totally get that. Especially if you decide you want to move to your house up in the Highlands or down to the beach in Florida. Those states are totally different. Those states are expensive and an absolute total pain in the rear to go through the probate process with the courts. Here in Georgia, it's really no big deal. Really, they have the executor come into the court, say, raise your right hand, promise to do everything in the will. Great, come back and tell me when you're done. And that really is the whole process for probate. I mean, sure, there's a lot of stuff that has to be done to kind of close down your financial life, but whether you have a revocable trust or you've got a will, that stuff is still kind of the same. Certain assets, this last bullet point, certain assets, transferring those assets after death can be easier if it's already in a revocable trust, because it's all kind of nice and neat with a pretty little bow on it, you know, ready to be transferred around. But it's really not that big of a deal here in Georgia. But let's go back up to the top of the list for planning for incapacity. That's the big one. That's the one when I had clients that would come in and had as much gray hair as I have now, you know, really that's when we'd start talking about, all right, when you get to later years, we need to start thinking about what happens if you can't handle your own stuff. You know, what happens if incapacity comes along? And that could even happen for younger folks. It could even happen, gosh, we all drive on 285. We could all be in car accidents. We could all have brain injuries. Those are all things that we could all have issues with. And if your assets are in a revocable trust, that revocable trust has a provision in it that says, if I ever become incapacitated, this trust is no longer revocable. It's an irrevocable trust. And this other person or entity or bank or someone steps into your shoes as the trustee and basically can start managing things for your benefit, making sure that all of your bills can be paid and that all of your investments keep going. Those are all things that we think about for revocable trust. So those are the big reasons people use them here in Georgia, is the incapacity planning. And whereas I used to almost never see revocable trust here in Georgia, they've gotten to be much more in vogue. And that might be because of the driving on 285 issue, that we never know what might happen and when we might become incapacitated. It might not have anything to do with your gray hair. It might have something to do with an accident of some sort. So planning for incapacity.